all of his decks are a little bit unusual, so it's possible that those specific tech choices in his decks may be throwing CitizenNappa off in terms of his ban decisions.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and go into the first game here. We've seen this already once out of Muzzy before. Quest Rogue up against the Murloc Paladin. And CitizenNappa was able to play Quest Rogue pretty effectively last time around. We'll see if he's able to get off to a good start here. Both players have pretty reasonable opening hands, but Nappa is missing that piece to start getting the quest completion underway. Meanwhile, Muzzy has a pretty good ability to start onto the board fast.
Yeah, Muzzy's list here is kind of a hybrid style of Murloc deck. He's playing pretty aggressive with the Grimscale Chums, but he doesn't have the sort of all-in Murloc package. He's not playing Cold Light Seers, as you generally see some of the really, really aggressive versions playing. And he has a pretty high curve. He actually goes all the way up to a singleton Onyxia, which he can get off of his Curie. That's
right. We've seen people split their tech decisions across their dragons. Some people play Onyxia, some people play Deathwing. What are your opinions on that, if any, as a dragon expert himself?
I'm actually a big fan of Onyxia, particularly in proactive decks that can often run out of gas. Part of what you want from your big drops in a deck like this is something that can really help you keep the pressure on when the game goes on. In some cases, Deathwing can be great at recovering in a game where you're behind, which is something this deck can struggle with. But if you want to keep the pressure on, there's very few things better than Onyxia.
Well, CitizenNappa picks up a second Glacial Shard, which means he can complete the quest through all of his pieces together with the Gadget and the Shadow Step. Muzzy can continue to put the pressure on him. He's able to protect his Murlocs. He has 2 Megasaurs that can land for big damage, so it comes down to the rush. Who can get to their game plan faster and dominate the board?
Yeah, and we actually see one of Muzzy's unusual card decisions in his hand with that Crazed Alchemist. Alchemist can be especially strong against Doomsayers, which is a card that can really give this style of Paladin deck trouble, but it can also just be burst damage with some of your high health minions. In particular, Spike Ridge Steed can turn, say a Stonehill Defender into a giant threat thanks to the damage from Crazed Alchemist. And that's a lot of what this style of game is about, is pushing for significant damage before your opponent can get quest online. If Crazed Alchemist can give that little bit more so you can get over the edge before they can complete the quest, it could be a really big deal.
All right, well, with the Youthful Brewmaster now, CitizenNappa didn't have to commit that second Glacial Shard immediately out to the board and keep it as a surprise for Muzzy. And so he has availability of bounces this turn. I think what he is also concerned about, too, is what is the opponent setting up for turn 4? We usually see Juice Over Champion, Blessing of Kings, maybe even a Megasaur. Just as a buff on a single Murloc can still be threatening. I think it's +3 attack. So I think he's weighing all of his options for this turn, trying to account for what Paladin can do on turn 4.
Yeah, this is really kind of an interesting point for Nappa here, because he'd love to keep these minions contained with his Glacial Shard effects, but at the same time, he wants to ensure that he's not wasting too many of them before things actually get big and threatening. Right. But here it will be the Glacial Shard pinning down the Murloc, and yeah, he's going to commit the Shadow Step, so getting that shard bounce back up. So just the no, he's gonna go ahead and get everything going. He's just firing all of these bounce backs and these shards in, shutting everything down. And this enables him, if, for instance, he actually just picks up Preparation next turn, he could just have active quest as early as turn 4.
Gentle Megasaur offers Taunt, Divine Shield, and Liquid Membrane. Divine Shield improves your survivability. Taunt doesn't really do too much there, so Muzzy takes what protects his board the best. And now Nappa has the ability to complete the quest, and the Novice Engineer would be very useful in the future if he runs out of resources, because that is one way that can go problematic. If Murloc ends up playing board control oriented, hits a really powerful Sunkeeper Terran, for example, you can run out of resources.
Yep. And Nappa actually has a really powerful turn here. He can clear the Stonehill Defender with his Panda plus Dagger, and then Glacial Shard plus Ferryman plus Glacial Shard can shut down the other 2 minions, rolling him into turn 5, where he'll just be able to play the quest with 4 minions on board, unless Muzzy has some sort of way to clear them off.
Yeah, and ironically enough, too, this would be a completion of the quest, even post-nerf, because he would have played Glacial Shard 5 times, leading up into turn 5. So
everyone's saying it's dead.
Yeah, everyone's
right here, HCT Championship. He could be completing the new version of the quest this turn. Okay, he's going to go ahead and be a little bit more conservative here, trade off rather than trying to go for the maximum possible result and then use both of these effects. This way, he's actually interesting. He's going to go ahead and bounce. All right, I believe he was bouncing. Okay, there it is, the Glacial Shard. This is to try to, I believe, protect himself from getting his board cleared by potentially consecration. He didn't want to just have everything there on the board and run that risk. It does mean his Crystal Core next turn is significantly less explosive, however.
There's a very cute play from Muzzy with the Rallying Blade to buff the attack. I was wondering if he even wanted to contemplate flipping it with the Crazed Alchemist, but he has the ability to do that next turn while keeping his options open. So I like the hero power here because you might get tempted to flip it preemptively, but you want to do it as a trade as opposed to the other way around. Nappa didn't pick up the preparation, so this Crystal Core is going to take his entire turn, which is yet like kind of what you mentioned, getting the minion out onto the board earlier versus throwing it out there, potentially getting removed.
Yeah, and now Nappa is kind of getting a little bit punished for his decision last turn to try to play around that consecration.
Right.
And he would have still had the Novice Engineer in hand. He would have had one minion, at least, that did survive the consecration. So, perhaps that may have been a little bit of a misstep because now Muzzy is kind of ending up a little bit in the driver's seat. It'll still be tough for Muzzy to come back from this completely.
The moment Nappa picks up a Mimic Pot into a minion that can generate a lot of resources, it'll be tough. But until we get to that point, things are looking okay for Muzzy because resource-wise, he's got Curator and Tyrion.
Well, that Rockpool Hunter's a great draw for Muzzy here because it does buff his minion to enough attack that he can kill the Panda on board, and he finds Divine Shield, but he already has one.
Oh,
so
I mean, that's one of those things where you do want to wait for the sequencing to see what happens, but because of this ordering, he ends up losing.
If you're going to trade there for sure, if you're 100% attacking, is it correct to attack first because there's the possibility of that?
You like my invention?
The additional +1/+1 on that does mean that the Murloc can kill off the 5/5, so that could be crucial.
Yeah, but this is what we're talking about. CitizenNappa able to generate a lot of resources through Swashbuckler, Patches, Novice Engineer, able to even Shadow Step to draw more, either off his Novice Engineer or one of his cheap resource generating cards. Muzzy doesn't have bad plays, though. He's got Curator and Tyrion in following turns, which may allow him to play the long game. Because before, what you really want to do as Murloc Paladin is pressure the Quest Rogue before they can get their resources online. But in this case, Muzzy's going to have to play the slower game.
Yeah, and the combination of the Glacial Shard plus the number of bounce effects Nappa had early on, which meant he was able to not only complete the quest, but complete the quest while having kept himself in a really comfortable position, both board and life-wise this game. So, despite the fact that the aggressive Murloc deck is usually a favorite in this matchup, Nappa's draw happened to be exceptional against it.
Nappa looks like he's firing on all cylinders, just accounting for every possibility. If he needs to use Shadow Step now and try to get value off of it on his patches beforehand, chooses to do it, and I don't blame him. Having this as an opportunity to follow up and immediately start getting removal onto the board is really strong. And CitizenNappa is just kind of talking to us also prior to this tournament about what it means to be a strong player. This is what he said.
The most important thing about being a Hearthstone player is being able to think critically. There are usually more factors in play than just what to do in the current turn, like the meta, what your opponent probably has, and sometimes there are like other game factors that might even come to play, like how they mouse over the cards.
A lot to pay attention to.
Absolutely. And Quest Rogue is one of those decks that I personally believe.
Silver Moon Portal. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but that was actually pretty great for punching through this Curator here and keeping his development on this board. He even gets a 5/5 minion off of the Silver Moon Portal because of the quest.
Could be something very detrimental, though. Okay, that's it hurts, but I mean, this is not Doomsayer.
It is not Doomsayer, it's true.
Right.
Actually, I think that's advantageous for him because he can actually clear off the Curator and then, because of the 1 damage, clear off the additional Murloc with just his weapon and one of his minions. So he can push for a bunch of damage if he wants and even keep the threat of a potential big Spike Ridge steeded minion off the table.
Choose soon.
Yeah, and I'm not really finding an out here for Muzzy because his hand is very slow. And that split between Onyxia and Deathwing won't even matter at this rate here. Stonehill's defender not going to be it. Muzzy concedes, and that's going to be game 1 to the Quest Rogue, which, you know, I got to say again, has been winning a lot of these unfavorable matchups. I mean, Nappa did have a pretty good ability to, I mean, he had a really good draw, and he has a good ability to kind of dissect the board, but you know, this is the kind of stuff that people really talk about Quest Rogue. They're saying, is it really that bad against the aggressive decks?
Well, I mean, we saw that game. One of the things about Quest Rogue is that it does have so many tools, even against these matchups, which can be very difficult. If you're able to have your draw line up appropriately, you just explode so quickly with those 5/5s that you are just outclassing them as early as turn 5, like we saw in that game.
That's right. CitizenNappa off to a really good start, up 1-0 over Muzzy, and if he wins this, what a great moment for him, as well as those new minted fans. Take a look at what we had to say about CitizenNappa as we got to chat with him earlier this day.
Well met.
My name is CitizenNappa. I'm 19 years old, and I come from Sydney, which is a city in Australia. My favorite sport is tennis. Used to play tennis in high school. I was alright, I wasn't that good. My favorite food is sushi. I just really like fish with the rice. July 9th is my birthday, and it's also the final day of the tournament. I hope I get to qualify for the World Championships. That would be a pretty good birthday present.
CitizenNappa 2 games away from going to the top 8, which would, of course, what we're talking about is what people are fighting for, top 8, top 4. That's what gets you to the World Championship stage guaranteed. And, of course, being able to win a huge amount of money, as I believe winner gets $60,000. A huge amount of money, probably the biggest that we'll see outside the World Championship this year.
That's quite the birthday present. Not only winning $60,000, but qualifying for the World Championship. And CitizenNappa said that he felt like players from Australia have a tough time of really having the chance to play in big events and having their presence known on the world stage. But this is his opportunity. And you know, he's up 1 game against Muzzy, who many players believe may be the strongest player in the entire tournament.
All right, well, I mean, Muzzy's been in this exact same situation just as recently as a previous series where he lost the Quest Rogue and Murloc Paladin match very similarly, where it's like, yeah, I'm dominating the board, but Quest Rogue just came back, got pretty much one of the ideal situations, and lost a favorable matchup there. So I'm not too worried for Muzzy. Nappa, in the meantime, that was one of the decks he might have struggled with, because Shaman's, of course, available to Muzzy, and that could have been bad too. We're going to go to the Shaman Mirror. This is something that we talked about a lot in Theory Crafted a ton, primarily because Muzzy seems to specifically have teched his deck lists against the Shaman Mirror, and I wonder how much are those Sea Giants going to make an impact? Yeah,
Muzzy has 2 copies of Sea Giant and only a single copy of Bloodlust and Devolve. So compared to a average version of the Evolved Shaman deck, he's going to have more big plays that don't require him to really have an advantage. Bloodlust is a card that obviously fantastic when it ends the game, but can often just rot in your hand when things aren't going your way. Whereas in a matchup where both players are playing big boars, toteming all the time, Sea Giant can come down very quickly and be a huge threat.
Oh, I love this from Muzzy. A lot of people might feel tempted to just get early board control, but Muzzy, recognizing he has a very reactive hand, would rather wait out to see an opportunity to use Jade Claws, or maybe even have an opportunity for patches to train something proactively, so that way he gets value. And if his opponent happened to have Jade Claws when CitizenNappa passed on turn 1, he would have gotten ultimately punished. So this was a very good moment of patience here for Muzzy.
Yeah, Bloodsteel Corsair with patches obviously is extremely powerful in a number of aggressive decks, but a lot of players will just kind of run it out turn 1 all the time. And you know, Muzzy, we saw just there on the screen, #1 point winner in 2016. He has a lot of experience playing these matchups in these decks, and looking for the ability to make the most of his patches rather than just get a 1/1 on the board right away.
Right, and such a big thing. Look at CitizenNappa, but now he's playing Jade Claws. Muzzy's held for this exact moment, and now it's swung the exact opposite way, where you remove the charge, you got value off the patches, and this is definitely a much better position as opposed to Muzzy losing that Bloodsteel Corsair and patches for nothing.
And Muzzy, though, he's going to play mana efficiently here, recognizing the value of using his hero power. Thing from Below, obviously a very major component of these decks, and hero powering and forcing your opponent to invest resources into clearing your hero power due to threat of, say, Flame Tongue Totem or Evolve, can really dictate how the early games plays out, and then if you've hero powered enough, well, your Thing from Belows are cheap, and you can have explosive mid and late game turns as well.
So Kibler win. Neither opponent neither player in this matchup ends up off to an explosive start. What really ends up dictating it? Is it the evolves? Is it the devolves? Is it the board sweeps? What?
Evolve is way better than devolve. Devolve is not a good reaction to the power turn, which is Doppelgangster plus evolve. Because Doppelgangster by itself is not a 5-cost minion. You're playing one 5-cost card that makes 3 2/2s, but if that gets evolved and then devolved, you still have 3 normal 5-cost minions. So that's one of the big tempo swings, is that Doppelgangster plus evolve. And we see Muzzy's hand, he has not only Doppelgangster plus evolve, but also the second evolve and the Sea Giant, so additional ways to take advantage of that mid-game stall.
CitizenNappa, think about if it's worth killing this healing totem, and now because he's taking it slow, Muzzy's been waiting in the shadows.
Oh! And he draws his patches. The turn he was going to play Corsair. The number of times that's happened to me, I feel that. I feel that.
Yeah, it hits everyone across the globe as they see that, but still not going to stop Muzzy from going for the play. And it's essentially a lost draw, because it would have gotten him a different card into his deck. It's still correct to go for this line, though. I mean, you had a 1 in 24 in that instance to draw patches. Most of the time, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and a lot of players, that's one of the reasons, in many cases, I think a lot of players will just decide to play their Corsair early because they don't want to run the risk of exactly what just happened to Muzzy.
Right.
But as you mentioned, the odds that does happen, but prior to you actually playing your Corsair, are pretty low. Unfortunately for Muzzy, it's exactly what happened right here.
Muzzy looking like a Jade Lightning turn, very clean. Still no opportunity to put that Sea Giant just yet, but he's got Doppelgangster involved next turn, which is really important as the player on the coin.
CitizenNappa picks up his own evolve, and he has a actually significant board already. Finds potential for Alakir the Windlord off of this Stonehill Defender.
Yeah, Psychotron not necessarily a bad option either, because it's cheaper, and his hand's a little bit expensive because he's got double Doppelgangster and Aya Blackpaw. But Alakir is the most individual value, especially with Flame Tongue Totems available still in his deck. Might be one of the options he leans towards.
Generally, in this sort of situation, with a hand like CitizenNappa's, I tend to lean toward the Alakir simply because you do have plays for those next few turns. And one of the things that is important in this matchup, he actually takes the Geomancer. Okay. Wow.
We're setting up for a very powerful evolve.
This is the sort of opposite plan. He's just going for the biggest tempo swing he can get next turn. He's like, I want to play this Geomancer, and he's really representing, I'm looking to swing this as much as I can with Doppelgangster Evolve next turn.
Yeah, it might work out for him. If Muzzy doesn't get a huge evolve right now, this could be the pivotal moment of the game. Job done.
All right, stat-wise, that's pretty bad. He got 2 4/4s and a 6/6. So that doesn't really match up well against the possibilities you can get off the evolve. But at the moment, CitizenNappa doesn't have a great way to deal with this. He wanted to play his own Doppelgangster and his own evolve. But if he just plays that into this board, well, there's the possibility that things go badly for him against a Auctioneer left in play.
Yes. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to turn down. He's going to go for his own evolve. There's a lot of possibilities where this could go really right or really wrong. And it looks like he picks up a charger. The Reckless Rocketeer gets the ability to trade. He gets an injured Blade Master off the Twilight Summoner. And that investment into that 2-mana minion has paid off huge dividends here for CitizenNappa.
Yeah, that's the literal best possible outcome on a 3-mana minion with an evolve. So, now Muzzy, he has his own evolve number 2, but doesn't have a huge board to work with. I mean, he may just devolve back.
I mean, he has the ability to trade twice over proactively and evolve afterwards.
He does.
So he can trade 6/6 into 4/5, 4/4 into a 2/3 or 2/2, and then evolve.
He could actually, if he also wanted to, he could devolve first, potentially get better trades, and then evolve.
True. Yeah, that's also another thing, too. He's devolving immediately.
So here he took a... Ooh.
Oh, man, I like that a lot. Now he's able to get a really good trade and get value off the Maelstrom Portal. What an excellent choice and sequencing here from Muzzy.
I mean, he can either get value off of the Maelstrom Portal or fire off the Evolve himself, so he'd get 2 7-drops.
It's true, although the Evolve doesn't really work on Sea Giant, right?
It's true.
No 13-mana minion.
Boo-hoo, you only still have an 8/8.
Okay. Core Hound and Tar Lurker?
Oh, that is...
Or Tar Lord,
yeah, that's a
me.
big board. So Nappa does have the devolve. We're just going to see this swing back and forth. This is just Darwinism in action right now. Evolve, you devolve.
Sure.
There's little time.
Back and forth we go.
Oh!
Big time Racketeer. Nose Dormu comes out as well.
Did he get it off? Okay, he did.
I think so. Although, apologies, Sea Giant costs 10 mana, not 12. I was thinking of Mountain Giant. And Muzzy's got to go a little bit quickly, but should be fine here.
This is the real test. Can you play Nose Dormu Hearthstone?
Just goes face. This might be the longest we've ever seen Nose Dormu survive in a top-level Hearthstone game. But it doesn't seem like the pressure's really getting to them, as they have plenty of time to make these decisions.
Right, well, Nappa does have the ability to potentially trade off here, but he's going to just go face now. Is this just back and forth?
If this isn't Taunt Totem, I think he might
Yeah,
just be
no,
dead.
that's actually just 16 damage that Muzzy has, so doesn't take him any time for that.
Yeah, CitizenNappa recognized that. He tried to go for the Taunt Totem, but didn't land it, and now Muzzy's able to close it out. That is 2 times to the face Nose Dormu was able to land there. And at the same time, I feel like despite all the swings, that was kind of what was happening. Muzzy was pulling further ahead, managed his resources excellently despite drawing patches in the Bloodsail Corsair. I love that game, Kibler.
Well, and I think that game really highlighted how powerful the Sea Giant is in that matchup because, you know, yes, it can be devolved, but it's going to be devolved into another 8/8. So not only did it give Muzzy like a strong board if there weren't evolves and devolves involved, but it also is just so powerful even if it does get sort of cut down a notch, unlike the rest of most of the minions.
That's right. So the mirror ends up going Muzzy's way as he has teched all of his tournament decks to be good against shamans. And we'll see if he's able to carry up that momentum. Now, we did mention that we got to know CitizenNappa. We also got to sit down with Muzzy and chat with him on all the pressure and all the expectations leading into the Spring Championship.
Well met.
My name is Muzahidul Islam. I'm 20 years old and my battle tag is Muzzy. I used to be a sports guy back in high school. I played baseball a bunch, but I don't actually even remember the last time I watched a baseball game now. I currently attend Albright College studying game and simulation development. The current plan is to eventually make my own games, understand game theory, and hopefully create another Hearthstone, right?
Interesting to hear that Muzzy also has aspirations to be a game designer. I mean, if he's out here winning championships and then ends up being a game designer, who knows? Maybe he'll end up having a cute Pomeranian dog somewhere down the line and become a streamer as well.
It's a good first step. It's a good first step. But yeah, I mean, as a competitive player, you know, it is definitely something that shows that you have at least a grasp of the underpinning systems, the mechanics of what makes games tick. And it's a great first step to a career in game design.
Certainly. I think he's building up that credibility more and more. And of course, we're not here just playing Hearthstone. We're also having some influencers come out. As you see, Eloise is here. I believe Sky's Toast is in the house. And a few other streamers. We're just playing with the fans. So if you guys happen to be in Shanghai, I did read some comments on the forums like, oh, I didn't even know. I live in Shanghai. I didn't even know this was happening. You can still come on down and check out all the cool stuff. In the back, there's like Ungoro-themed waterfalls and little lounge areas where you can just hang out, take some photos, play against some of the players and streamers that you see from around the community.
Yeah, the venue here is absolutely incredible. I've never been a part of a production in a place like this. You have the array of all of the players' portraits on the back wall, and just being in front of this crowd and around this whole community is fantastic.
All right, let's go into game number 3. What could be a big turning point in the series, but it looks like everything is holding serve for now. Muzzy going to turn to his Jade Druid to try to take down Shaman, which is going to be a little tricky, but like we said, Muzzy has some of his own cards up his sleeves.
Yeah,
one of them, of course, being Wild Pyromancer.
Yeah, Wild Pyromancer is a card that we saw in some versions of Jade Druid. There's actually some dedicated Wild Pyromancer Acolyte of Pain versions of Jade Druid out there. But I think that this is sort of a nod from Muzzy in terms of where he wants his decks to thrive. And Pyromancer is particularly strong against decks like Aggro Druid and Shaman, because sometimes you don't quite have enough damage with, say, Swipe to clear off a board, but if you can pair that with Pyromancer, or perhaps pair Pyromancer with Earthen Scales or Jade Idol early in the game, it can really do a lot to dampen the impact of their board.
Yeah, and you can see how desperate Muzzy is to make sure that he doesn't end up losing to the board too much. Keeping Wrath, which is an excellent card against all those totems that can be problematic, such as Mana-Tide Totem, Flame Tongue Totem, Primal Fin Totem. CitizenNappa, once again, doesn't have a one-mana play. It's been kind of cut and dry here in the very beginning stages of both games so far that he's played Shaman. And Muzzy could go ahead and use the breather because he clearly didn't have a good play either.
Yeah, Nappa does have a powerful hand for the matchup, though. He has the combinations we saw that was so strong last game of Doppelgangster plus Evolve. And this is a matchup where that is at some of its strongest, because Jade Druid is a deck that doesn't really clear multiple big minions very well.
Right. In fact, I've heard a huge debate as recently as a week or a half ago at C3 Cup with a lot of the top players. We talk about Pavel, RDU, all kind of sat down and we're talking about Evolve and Doppelgangsters. A lot of them thinking, you know what, I'm going to start keeping it in every matchup in every matchup against Jade Druid because I think it's so important to winning against them. I don't care about necessarily the Fireflies at the very beginning. I think that very pivotal Evolve is going to be what wins you the game.
Are they saying that they would keep either of them individually or both of them together?
Some of them even think about keeping them individually, but a lot of times they're talking about together.
Well, I think you definitely keep them both together in that match because they're just so strong. At least that's been my experience. I don't know.
Yeah, individually you could justify throwing it away.
Right.
Particularly if you're on the play, you don't have the coin.
Yes. Oh,
sometimes you can justify keeping one of the pieces if you're on the coin.
Yeah. Well, Nappa does have the coin here, and that is going to give him some explosive potential in just a couple turns. And he just picked up some more explosive potential for later in the game. If that initial push doesn't get through, he has Alec here, the Wind Lord, waiting in the wings for the later turns.
Well, you know, CitizenNappa trying to find a very clean way to roll into this Doppelgangster Evolve turn, but you know, doesn't have a very clean way to remove and avoid the overload, because if you use Jade Claws, for example, he would be overloaded for the following turn, not able to use that Evolve combo.
And one thing that we actually didn't comment on while we were discussing the Doppelgangster Evolve, Muzzy just innovated out a Nourish to ramp up his mana.
Right.
And he specifically used it for mana crystals. That's not something that you see all the time. Usually when you see players use Nourish in Jade Druid, it's typically most often used for card draw. But Muzzy has the Gadget Auctioneer in his hand along with a couple of spells. So he's just thinking, okay, I need to take it over this board as quickly as I can in terms of actually being able to play my removal spells, and he can try to have the Gadget Auctioneer carry him in terms of card draw.
Yeah. A lot of times with the Jade Druid, if you have all card draw, you can't really fit all the plays. You actually are limited by mana. So I like using the Nourish for crystals in that position as well.
And Nappa's kind of in a tough spot here. He wants to potentially play the. Was that Jade Lightning on the 1/1? It was. Wow.
Well, I mean, he really wants to protect his 1/4.
Yeah, and so the point of this may seem crazy. This may just seem like, you know, it's totally off the wall, maybe he misclicked kind of thing. But this, I think, is pretty clearly CitizenNappa trying to give himself a 4-drop off of Evolve next turn.
Yeah, and it's a huge tell for Muzzy as well, saying, you know what, I'm saving the coin, I haven't played it yet, I'm trying to protect the Stonehill Defender. What on earth could I possibly have? It's most likely Doppelgangster Evolve.
Right, but now he just used his Jade Lightning, and there's a Gadget Auctioneer in the board. So it is now pretty scary in terms of trying to just go Doppelgangster Evolve, because if you give a 9-mana Jade Druid an Auctioneer in play for an entire turn, that can be just absolutely game-ending. He did just pick up patches, though, so that combined with the Flame Tongue Totem can allow him to clear off this board. Right. He'll have to use his Jade Claws as well, but that will prevent him from Doppelgangster evolving this turn.
What it does do, though, is it gives Muzzy yet another turn to potentially reset and grab the initiative onto the board. And the nice thing about Nappa is that because he overloaded, he still has the coin, so he can go ahead and use that Doppelgangster Evolve the following turn. How much can Muzzy put onto the board and pressure his opponent before Nappa inevitably takes it over with the Doppelgangster Evolve? That's kind of what the question has become at this point in the game.
Oh, well, there's Yogg.
Oh, boy.
We've seen some nice Yogg so far this event.
We've also seen a couple of disappointing ones as well.
It's true.
Where, you know, Yogg hit Jason So in his own face and then killed himself. It's like, well, good luck.
Muzzy now has a couple of options. Primordial Drake would take out the Jade Golem at least, but leaves him with not much left in his hand to potentially answer a big refill, just the swipe. Yeah, it is going to be Doppelgangster point all the time.
There's a lot of powerful options against Druid. We're looking at Cairn, high main. What's going to be behind the door? Okay.
All right. Well, Madame Goya's pretty weak. The total amount of stats that CitizenNappa got there is actually not bad, particularly given that Muzzy doesn't have that many great ways to actually fight through this. He does have swipe, which can give him some tools to fight back here, but it doesn't really line up very well because everything is pretty big and he doesn't have any pyromancer or anything like that to help power it up.
That's right. And, the stats are also a little bit skewed primarily because of the Beast. That is a legendary that summons a 3/3 on Muzzy's side as soon as it dies. So one of those very peculiar situations where, I don't exactly know to say if that was a really good evolve or that was just an average one.
I think that's good for Nappa here. Getting the front-loaded stats is pretty powerful because it makes it difficult for Muzzy to deal with things immediately, and Nappa is looking to just get enough pressure in, get enough damage in that Bloodlusts or Alec here let him actually just end the game.
Muzzy's going to go ahead and start clearing a little bit off the board, trying to prevent him from getting completely duped by Bloodlust or another evolve. He still has the yogg-saron as a backup, but he's played a fair amount of spells so far.
He hasn't played a ton. I think it's somewhere in the realm of like 7 or 8. So yogg-saron, until you're up into the teens, can be kind of difficult to rely on for clearing a big board. And CitizenNappa is looking like he's going to have a big board.
Still just need that one doom, though.
It's true.
Just to clear the board, draw a bunch of cards, and refill your entire hand. But yes, you're absolutely right. There's so many ways you can whiff. And, that is also a point of desperation. Maybe Muzzy doesn't have to get to that point, but we'll see. If you guys are a fan of comic books, as we are, as CitizenNappa going to go ahead and just start loading up the board pressure again, trying to find an opportunity to use either Bloodlust or Alec here on the following turn here.
And I think that Nappa is trying to push as much as he can here, recognizing that this is sort of his opportunity.
Boy.
Another Jade Idol picked up. All right, it's Yogg time.
You see that? Malfurion can attack. Okay, it didn't land on the Hog Chopper at least. Still looking for an opportunity to clear the board. Muzzy is also doing direct damage. There is a world where Muzzy can just win by killing his opponent straight up.
All right, well, okay. This actually, he has enough attack to punch through.
Wow!
Oh
Are
God.
you kidding me? 3 Primordial Drakes come to the hand, and if CitizenNappa can't find a way to clear off this board and start winning the game in the next couple of turns, Muzzy is going to have wave after wave of area effect cards with Taunt.
And Nappa does have that Alec here, but that's not a card you want to be using defensively. That's a card that you want to be closing out the game with. Muzzy's still at 23 life. Bloodlust does not represent enough. This is looking like that Yogg may have just totally swung the game for Muzzy.
Yeah, it's a tough point because CitizenNappa could start pushing for lethal. You can do 15 damage right now, put Druid at 8. But is that too risky? What ways can my opponent punish me? 2 Wraths have been used, 1 swipe, but he hasn't used Feral Rages or Earthen Scale, so he could gain a ton of life and I could get super punished. And my opponent also just drew a Thistle Tea, so potentially has like 3 of the same exact cards to punish me. It's a tough spot for CitizenNappa, but I mean his hand's kind of indicating that he should be a little bit aggressive here. Because if he loses the board even one time, it's going to go the complete opposite direction. It won't even be close.
All right, yeah, it will be a Windlord to the face. Muzzy finds a Wrath.
Oh, wow. The Wrath allows him a full clear now because he can use Primordial Drake and the yogg-saron attack, plus the Wrath to fully clear and have a 4-8 taunt. Jade Lightning's already been used as well, so CitizenNappa's ability to end the game through direct damage is severely limited.
So Muzzy could face tank this with the upgraded weapon to try and get through some damage with the Yogg here, and not actually have the Yogg actually take damage and die to the Alec here. But all right, he's gonna go ahead and punch through, and yeah, now it is Nappa who's on the defense. facing down a Primordial Drake, and little does he know, there's 2 more waiting in Muzzy's hand.
Yeah, and he's also definitely scared about the potential of dying. He knows that if he's keeping track, he knows Primordial Drake is the card that's been triplicated, is that the word? And then duplicated, I guess, because it's multiple copies. And in this position, CitizenNappa also has to worry about dying. So maybe he's using cards defensively, or maybe he has to save an ability to go on the offense with Jade Lightning.
All right, Nappa finds a White Eyes or an Ancient of Blossoms. Ancient of Blossoms has the highest health, so it can absorb the most possible damage. But that's not really what you're looking for in terms of trying to turn this game around. And maybe, okay, well, this can let me have the biggest chance of living next turn, but not actually necessarily winning the game.
Well, White Eyes allows him to play the Bloodsteel Corsair, and I think maybe Nappa has to set up for a Bloodlust next turn. Bloodlust plus Jade Lightning.
Yep. Oh, he's Jade Lightning now.
Okay. I mean, White Eyes kind of does the same thing as Jade Lightning. It removes minions, it puts power on the board. In this case, Nappa is going to try to save White Eyes for a potential swing. And Muzzy's not really worried at all. He can clear the board again, just through with another Primordial Drake.
I feel like we have like a song here. The Drakes go marching 3 by 3, hurrah.
3 by 3. It doesn't quite ring the same, Kip.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But there's 3 of them. There's actually 4 this game, right? He played one earlier, too.
That's right. That's right. It's suddenly become a different format. You can play 4 of the same card when you play yogg-saron. And Nappa is going to get swept away. You know, I kind of wonder if Muzzy even cares about the 3-1 and just wants to go board.
Make more Jades here.
Right.
You just make a big board and try and win the game. Punching that down doesn't really matter when you have 2 giant taunt minions here.
Yes. And with 1 card off Stonehill Defender, he knows that it has to be a devolve into a specific 2-card combo. Knows it's not possible, and that is a 2-1 lead for Muzzy.
Yeah, and that was one of the matchups, I think, that CitizenNappa, you know, was really looking to win, because that's one of the places where the Jade Druid deck can sometimes struggle if they do fall behind in the early game.
I mean, I think it's all fair in Love and Hearthstone, because you have the Quest Rogue that won an unfavorable against Murloc Paladin, and you have Jade Druid win an unfavorable against Evolved Shaman. And that's why you can't really count out anybody in a series, especially at the championship. All these players have put tons of preparation and time and thought into their decks. Yes, the Wild Pyromancer never really came into effect, but Muzzy had that as a backup in case things like his pressure with Jades or his yogg-saron didn't work out.
Yeah, we just saw that very cool gallery of all of the players here at the championship. A little zoom in on Muzzy, make him look particularly tough. But now it is just the Paladin deck remaining for Muzzy that he needs to pick up a win with, that we saw falter in that first game.
That's right. And no, we do know that Shaman's available, so the Shaman against Paladin has traditionally been very good, because no matter how big of a Murloc board you build up, Devolve just crushes it completely. We'll see, though. I mean, I feel like at this point I can't really predict who is going to win at this, because some people have been winning matchups that they shouldn't be winning at all.
Yeah, you know, it's definitely a very volatile format where even the matchups that seem like, you know, you should be significantly far behind, if you get a powerful enough draw, you can definitely come out on top. But Muzzy will be playing, as you mentioned, that Paladin deck, while CitizenNappa is playing the Shaman that he just played as well.
It is important to note that it seems like, at least on the surface, Muzzy has cards that are specifically teched against Shaman, with the inclusion of Crazed Alchemist. This is a card that swaps the attack and the health of cards, and if it happens to swap a 0 attack card with health, it kills it instantly. So against Primal Fin Totems, against Flame Tongue Totems, Mana Tides, it's an instant kill, which sometimes can swing the matchup. Yeah,
Muzzy's lineup overall seems to have individual card choices within his decks, rather than just overall archetypes that are specifically aimed at beating the Shaman deck. I believe he expected the Shaman deck to be very popular, and you know, in fact, his Mage deck, you know, it has Doomsayer, it has a Frost Nova, otherwise a fairly standard burn control style Mage. But here, Primal Fin Totem coming down in turn 1 for CitizenNappa. No Crazed Alchemist in Muzzy's hand just yet, so that is going to get some value.
Yep. CitizenNappa also saw a full mulligan from Muzzy, so knows that there's a very low chance of Crazed Alchemist. That is a guaranteed keep if Muzzy had it in his opening hand. So he just goes for it and gets rewarded, as he does have that Flame Tongue Totem to set up. And that's going to be a lot to deal with, but Muzzy does have that Consecration for the future turns. Yeah,
this is one of the ways that the Paladin deck can fall substantially behind. Flame Tongue Totem is very difficult for them to deal with unless they have the Crazed Alchemist or perhaps Rallying Blade, neither of which is currently in Muzzy's hand.
There's a lot of different tech cards that varies across all these tournament deck lists we're talking about. Some people cutting really core cards to the decks at one point in the history. Nappa's Shaman, though, is pretty much run-of-the-mill. It's got everything straightforward, no specific tech. So double devolve ends up being a huge factor in this matchup because things like Spikered Steed, things like even Tyrion to a certain extent, even though you get 7-mana minion, you lose its powerful Death Rattle and Divine Shield.
And here Nappa looks to be deciding exactly how he wants to attack into this Hydrologist. By trading his 1/1 Murloc, he does keep his totem healthy so it won't die to a potential consecration, which is one of the ways Muzzy can get back in this game. It does down power a little bit, his Flame Tongue totem on board, but he has the Corsairs in hand, so he can always take advantage of that with patches. But Rallying Blade, the immediate draw from Muzzy, gives him an answer to that Flame Tongue, which is crucial.
That was what I was exactly going to point out there, too. You know, the Rallying Blade is very strong against that now. You know, we didn't know that Muzzy would draw that card, but CitizenNappa can certainly account for that possibility as well. Ends up hedging against Consecration, gets punished by Rallying Blade. It's one of those situations, you know, that, you know, you're cursed if you do or don't.
Yeah, and the Bloodstealth Corsair will give him a way to deal with the second swing of the Rallying Blade, so still in a reasonable position as he is able to widen his board thanks to that totem. And even if he did get his Flame Tongue killed by that Rallying Blade, because of the line he took earlier, his Primal Fin will not die to this Consecration, and now one weapon dies, another gets picked up, but that Stone Claw will still protect the Primal Fin.
Yeah, it's a very weird dynamic that just happened there, or like interaction where specifically CitizenNappa was, you know, holding onto these Bloodstealth Corsairs to hit the weapons. Muzzy's trying to draw the weapons so he can set up for a better Consecration, but then CitizenNappa got the Stoneclaw to him to prevent that damage from coming through. So a lot of just awkward, uncomfortable situations going back and forth for this game so far.
Yeah. Overall, though, Nappa has a pretty strong position in this game. Even if Muzzy does fire off that Consecration, he could even just hero power and play Thing from below to protect that totem next turn, because he has used his hero power so many times already. His Thing is now to just 3 mana.
I mean, one of the things that I've also learned about Muzzy, too, is he really loves making his opponent, or he really loves baiting his opponent into thinking that he doesn't have a specific card. This seemed like a really good opportunity to consecrate, for example. You're removing 4 minions on the board, or 5 minions on the board, but Muzzy realizes there's no threat of Bloodlust immediately, considering that his opponent already used the coin on turn 1, and he can probably take a little bit of damage before being forced to consecrate. Although,
Hogger. And there's Cho! Warlock Cho shows up huge.
Are you serious?
Now there's actually a bunch of minions on CitizenNappa's side of the board that cannot die to this Consecration. If Muzzy does cast Consecration, he gives the Consecration to CitizenNappa thanks to Warlock Cho, and also that Consecration will spawn, what are they? I'm trying to, Gnolls, that's what they are, Gnolls. I'm like, what creature type are those guys? thanks to the Hogger.
Yeah, that's right, and of course the way the taunts kind of line up make that attack really awkward. Muzzy, even if he sets up a really big minion with the Spikered Steed, gets devolved. This is a very tight spot, and exactly what we were talking about. Why the paladin is considered to be, you know, unfavorited against shaman traditionally, because of the big wide board and because of the threat of devolve.
That's 3 legendaries. I think the pack upgrade already went in for CitizenNappa Devolve. The 3 different ones too.
You know, and cards like the Shimmering Tempest also could be very good, too.
You just get a Firelands Portal off that or something.
Sure. Seeing crazier things happen. Muzzy trying his best not to commit a spell onto the board. And just seeing if he can get something to stick here for the Spikered Steed, perhaps. CitizenNappa, no Bloodlust. But he does have Devolves, but at the same time, Lord Walker Cho also is one of those things where he doesn't want to give Devolve to his opponent, perhaps.
Well, he's even going to get a Gnoll, now I remember, off of the Hogger trigger here. Trade off does leave him with a little bit of room to make another Gnoll. Nope, he's going to go ahead and take down the weapon as well. So this is just, everything is really going against Muzzy after that evolve. Yeah, there it is.
Wow. Immediate concede. Muzzy realizes he is cornered. Cannot deal with the big evolve coming out from CitizenNappa, and the tech did not end up becoming a factor there. And we're going to Game 5, Kibler, a very pivotal one, because remember, the winner of this match advances to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, and Muzzy was someone, as you mentioned at the start of this match, pretty much everyone expected to be here. Everyone expected Muzzy to do well. CitizenNappa was the relatively unknown player in the group of death, and he's just 1 game away from the quarterfinals.
That's right, and you also skipped to day 3. You know, you can take a day to relax. Day 2 will be playing a lot of the lower bracket as well as the decider matches to finish out the top 8. You can tell that these players are very anxious to get this game started because they really want to see who can take it and go into the quarterfinals rolling. We'll come down to the last game here, and I think when you look at Muzzy's decks, even though it's teched against Shaman, he still had a matchup that was pretty unfavorable, so I don't think I'd be too upset if I was Muzzy.
Yeah, this deck for Muzzy is a generally solid deck. He has lost twice now with his paladin deck, but it is a strong, proactive deck that is capable of putting on a lot of pressure, and also can at least have a decent number of reactive tools thanks to things like the Rallying Blade and even the Crazed Alchemist in some spots. We see a little bit of the environment here.
Yeah, big shout out to our set designers. I think they've been doing such a good job with a lot of the set building and just like the atmosphere and environments that's been around the event. The wild open finals that we had last week, Kibler, was really cool to see all the lighting designs for a small studio. And we'll see if it sets the right tone going into game number 5. It's Pirate Warrior up against Murloc Paladin. This is a tough one. You know, Pirate Warrior does tend to get really far ahead against Murloc Paladin, especially if Pirate Warrior gets an early weapon.
Ooh, but there's an early Patches in the hand for Nappa, while Muzzy has double Inquisitor in his opening hand.
It's like you love to see the Nizas first make, but you really don't want to see the Patches. I guess maybe it's made up for the fact that there's Bloodsail Cultist, but can he even get to that point?
Yeah, but Nappa did pick up one of his really interesting cards in his particular build, the Grimy Gadgeteer. This is a card that we didn't really see that much in most versions of Pirate Warrior. He's actually playing that rather than playing any copies of Mortal Strike, which is one of the reasons it feels like his lists are kind of built to prey on other aggressive decks in terms of having little things to give you an edge. Mortal Strike's kind of inefficient other than to try and finish your opponent off when they're playing control. Right. But Grimy Gadgeteer, if you land a Gadgeteer, your opponent kind of has to trade into it, and then you already have a buffed minion that can be difficult for them to deal with from a tempo perspective.
Yeah, all of a sudden, Patches might get buffed, or Korkarn might get buffed. Who knows? Maybe Patches could become a 5/5 at this point.
All right, so this play from CitizenNappa here, playing out his Patches going face, is kind of indicative that he's looking to either play a captain next turn or potentially use a Bloodsail Cultist the next turn. So Muzzy does have some incentive to maybe just coin out his Rallying Blade here, but the rest of his hand is really expensive.
Let me think.
I mean, denying the pirate synergies is one of the core to be able to destroy this deck. People talk about how Pirate Warrior just is very strong, but it's also a deck that's self-contained over the course of expansions because it's tribal-based. Everything is so dependent on having a pirate on your board or in your hand, and I love that Muzzy recognized this. Yes, it's a low-value play, but ultimately it's going to stop Nappa's tempo from getting out of control here.
Yeah, and this is very important because now, Nappa had that Rusty Hook, which the fact that he held back his Rusty Hook was even more indication that he's looking to upgrade it with the Cultist next turn. And Muzzy clues into that and decides that he is not going to allow that to happen.
Yeah, and now we can see how much Grimy Gadgeteer can put, a damper into things right now. It's one of those awkward tech cards that you see it either do really well, or sometimes it's just kind of a 6/5 spread over 2 cards and nothing really impressive.
Well, right here it's looking really good because Muzzy doesn't have a clean way to get rid of it. He'd have to commit Consecration here. And yeah, this is trading with Muzzy's board in a deck that is extremely board and synergy focused. And now he's just getting a 5/6 for 2 mana if he wants it.
Yeah, Captain Greenskin seems a little bit more appealing, but Muzzy has Finja and Spiker Steed. This is where Spellbreaker really comes into play. A lot of Paladins are starting to recognize how valuable Spiker Steed is, and Pirate Warriors are teching Spellbreaker specifically against it.
Yeah, Spellbreaker is a great way to deal with any taunt, but specifically Spiker Steed, eliminating both the taunt ability immediately as well as the Death Rattle. And now, CitizenNappa, this is a really big board. He is threatening to potentially just end the game through, even through a Spiker Steed next turn, I believe. He's actually just shy.
I mean, we'll see if he's able to pull any Murlocs to help him, but I'm not seeing anything from Muzzy's deck list that would indicate otherwise.
Well, there's 13 damage waiting for CitizenNappa. Spellbreaker
wow.
upgrade!
The game-ending damage, and that is going to be it. You see the power of Grimy Gadgeteer and Spellbreaker, those tech cards really coming into play. And just as fast as we got started with that game, it is over. CitizenNappa is going to the top 8.
Yeah, and it has to feel incredible to be in CitizenNappa's shoes. You are the person who no one knew coming into today, looking into this group of death, and you are the one who comes out on top against such powerful opponents.
CitizenNappa has defeated X-Hope and Muzzy to book his ticket to the quarterfinals. And, you know, that's what we're kind of talking about with the Hearthstone Championship Tour. Last season, we saw Samuel Tao do the same exact thing and showed pretty strong, solid play. And another